The scorching Georgia sun beat down on Fort Bragg's training grounds as 76-year-old Samuel Sam Hayes pushed his rattling maintenance cart across the obstacle course perimeter. His weathered hands, marked by decades of hard work, gripped the handle with surprising steadiness despite the slight tremor of age. The faded red work shirt he wore daily hung loose on his lean frame, the fabric sun-bleached and worn soft from countless washings. Blue jeans, frayed at the cuffs, and scuffed brown work boots completed his humble uniform. His neatly trimmed white beard caught the morning breeze as he methodically collected spent brass casings with an almost obsessive precision that went unnoticed by the young rangers dominating this section of the base. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, 29 years old and leading a squad of 6 elite rangers, spotted the old groundskeeper struggling to reach debris near the rope climb station. The rangers, fresh from successful deployments in Afghanistan, had grown accustomed to seeing Sam around the base, but viewed him as nothing more than aging maintenance staff. To them, he was simply another civilian employee who kept the base clean while real soldiers handled the important work. "Hey, old-timer," Webb called out with a condescending smirk, causing his squad to pause their push-ups. "You missed some brass over by the wall climb. Maybe it's time for bifocals." The rangers chuckled as Sam slowly made his way toward the indicated area, his gait slightly uneven from an old injury. As he bent to collect the casings, a passing lieutenant colonel's vehicle approached the training area. Sam instinctively straightened and rendered a salute. The salute was imperfect, his aged shoulder preventing the crisp angle he once maintained, his hand trembling slightly as it held position. The rangers erupted in laughter. "Holy hell, look at that salute," Private Rodriguez shouted. "Looks like he's swatting mosquitoes." Sergeant Webb stepped forward, his voice dripping with mockery. "Listen, Pops, this is Ranger territory. Maybe stick to emptying trash cans and leave the military stuff to actual soldiers who know what they're doing." "Did you see that crooked mess?" Corporal Davis whispered loudly. "Old man probably swept floors at some supply depot back in Vietnam. Thinks he's still in the service." More laughter rippled through the squad as Sam lowered his trembling hand with controlled dignity. His steel blue eyes, still sharp despite his years, met Webb's gaze calmly. "Of course, Sergeant, just showing proper respect," he replied quietly, his voice carrying a gravelly undertone that hinted at years of shouting orders across battlefields. The rangers resumed their exercises, occasionally glancing over to share jokes about the wannabe soldier cleaning up after them. Sam continued his methodical work, each movement purposeful and precise, his shoulders carrying the weight of memories these young warriors could never imagine. The morning routine continued as it had for months, with the rangers viewing Sam as nothing more than an amusing distraction. Completely unaware, they were mocking a legend whose call sign had once struck terror into enemy hearts across multiple theaters of war. The harassment intensified over the following days as Staff Sergeant Webb made Sam his personal entertainment. During afternoon training rotations, Webb would deliberately gather his squad whenever Sam worked nearby, turning routine maintenance into a spectacle. "Check it out, Rangers," Webb announced Thursday afternoon as Sam collected spent brass near the urban warfare training village. "Our resident war hero is back to show us how it's done." The squad's laughter had become a familiar soundtrack to Sam's daily routine, but he continued his methodical work with unwavering professionalism, his weathered hands steady despite their tremor. The breaking point came during a complex building clearing exercise. The Rangers were conducting room-to-room searches in the mock village when Sam noticed Private Chen approaching a doorway with a fatal tactical error. The young soldier was focused on the ground floor entrance, completely ignoring the second-story window that provided a perfect ambush position. Sam's combat instincts, honed by decades of survival, overrode his humble groundskeeper role. "Hold position, soldier," he barked with sudden authority, his voice cutting through the simulated gunfire. "Check your high angles before entry." The entire squad froze, stunned by the unexpected command. Chen instinctively stopped, his training responding to the authoritative tone before his mind processed who had spoken. Webb's face flushed crimson as he stormed over, his squad following like a pack of wolves sensing blood. "What the hell do you think you're doing, old man?" Webb snarled, his voice shaking with rage. "This is a live exercise. You just compromised our entire operation." Corporal Davis stepped closer, his expression twisted with indignation. "You think you know tactics better than Rangers, janitor." Sam stood his ground, his steel blue eyes meeting Webb's furious glare with calm dignity. "Saw a vulnerability, Sergeant. Old habits," he replied quietly, but something in his posture had subtly shifted. The slight stoop of age seemed to straighten almost imperceptibly, and for a moment the tremor in his hands stilled completely. Webb jabbed a finger towards Sam's chest. "Your old habits belong in a supply closet, not on a ranger training ground. Get back to your trash cans before you get someone killed." As Sam turned to push his cart away, the familiar sound of helicopter rotors in the distance triggered something deep in his memory. Suddenly, the Georgia heat transformed into the suffocating humidity of the Mekong Delta, 1972. 24-year-old Sergeant Samuel Hayes crouched in elephant grass. His car 15 ready watching North Vietnamese regulars establish an ambush position near a village his team was tasked to secure. His squad leader, a green lieutenant fresh from Fort Benning, was about to walk them straight into a kill zone. "Sir, recommend we flank left through the tree line," young Hayes had whispered into his radio. That position's got overlapping fields of fire. The lieutenant had listened then, trusting the instincts that would eventually earn Hayes a call sign that enemy forces would whisper about in fear. The memory faded as quickly as it came, leaving Sam alone with his maintenance cart while the Rangers resumed their exercise. Completely unaware they had just dismissed a legend whose tactical expertise had once turned the tide of battles they couldn't imagine. The harassment escalated dramatically over the following week as Staff Sergeant Webb transformed Sam's daily humiliation into base-wide entertainment. Word spread through the barracks that the old groundskeeper had tried to give tactical advice to Rangers, and the story grew more distorted with each telling. Webb organized what he called salute inspections whenever Sam worked near training areas, gathering crowds of young soldiers to witness the elderly man's trembling, imperfect military courtesy. "Check it out, everyone," Webb announced during Thursday's afternoon PT formation. "Our resident war hero is going to demonstrate proper military bearing for us real soldiers." The breaking point came during a joint training exercise with visiting instructors from the Ranger Training Brigade. Webb spotted Sam collecting brass casings near the MOUT village and saw his opportunity for maximum humiliation. "Hey, old-timer," he called out, his voice carrying across the training ground. "Since you're such a tactical expert, why don't you show these instructors that outstanding salute of yours?" Nearly 30 rangers and instructors formed a semicircle as Sam slowly straightened, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the obvious mockery. His trembling hand rose in salute, the imperfect angle drawing snickers from the younger soldiers. Master Sergeant Rick Coleman, a grizzled veteran of multiple deployments, had been watching the spectacle with growing discomfort. Something about the old groundskeeper's bearing, the way he held his shoulders despite the tremor, the controlled breathing, the steel-blue eyes that seemed to catalog every face in the crowd, triggered a memory from his early career. Coleman stepped closer, studying Sam's weathered features with increasing recognition. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Are you Sam Hayes?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a distant battle. Sam's expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes. "Just the groundskeeper, Master Sergeant," he replied quietly. Coleman's face went pale as the pieces clicked together. He had seen this face before, in classified briefings and whispered conversations among senior NCOs. The legendary operator whose exploits were spoken of in reverent tones, whose call sign had become synonymous with impossible missions and unparalleled precision. "Holy shit," Coleman breathed, "you're Reaper One." The atmosphere around the training ground shifted instantly. The laughter died, replaced by an electric tension as the instructors recognized the gravity in Coleman's voice. Webb's confident smirk faltered as he noticed the sudden change, confusion replacing his earlier swagger. Coleman pulled out his military phone with trembling fingers, scrolling through contacts until he found the number he needed. "Colonel Martinez, this is Master Sergeant Coleman at Training Ground Charlie. Sir, I need you here immediately. We have a situation that requires your personal attention. It's about Reaper One." The call lasted less than 30 seconds, but its impact was immediate. Coleman ended the conversation and turned back to the crowd, his voice carrying new authority. "Nobody moves until the colonel arrives, not one damn person." The Rangers exchanged confused glances as Coleman approached Sam with obvious reverence. The recognition chain now set in motion toward the highest levels of command. The oppressive silence stretched across Training Ground Charlie as Master Sergeant Coleman's words hung in the air like smoke from a distant battlefield. Staff Sergeant Webb shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading on his forehead despite the shade, while his rangers stood frozen in confused attention. Sam remained motionless beside his maintenance cart, weathered hands resting on the handle, his steel-blue eyes distant but alert. The faded red work shirt stirred slightly in the breeze, and for those who knew how to look, his posture held the subtle readiness of a man who had survived more battles than these young soldiers could imagine. The rumble of an approaching vehicle cut through the tension like a blade. A black staff car bearing command insignia rolled to a precise stop, and Colonel David Martinez emerged with the controlled urgency of a career officer responding to a crisis. At 54, Martinez commanded respect through presence alone, his uniform crisp, his bearing unmistakable. his chest decorated with ribbons that spoke of multiple combat deployments. He surveyed the assembled personnel with sharp eyes, taking in the unusual formation, the nervous energy of the Rangers, and finally settling his gaze on the elderly groundskeeper in work clothes. Master Sergeant Coleman, Martinez said, his voice carrying across the training ground with practiced authority. Your call mentioned Reaper 1. I need immediate clarification. Coleman snapped to attention, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Sir, civilian employee Samuel Hayes. I believe this man is former Sergeant First Class Samuel Hayes, call sign Reaper 1, MACVSOG multiple classified operations Vietnam through Desert Storm. The colonel's expression shifted subtly, professional skepticism, giving way to something approaching recognition. Martinez approached Sam directly, ignoring protocol that would normally keep a commanding officer at distance from maintenance staff. Mr. Hayes, he said quietly, studying the weathered face, the scar barely visible beneath the white beard. The way Sam held himself with unconscious military bearing despite his humble role. Do you recall Firebase Alpha, Tay Ninh Province 1971, the night extraction when the LZ was compromised? Sam's eyes focused more sharply, decades of buried memories stirring. 103rd Cavalry got pinned down by mortars. Had to call in danger-close artillery to break contact, he replied, his gravelly voice carrying the weight of lived experience. The colonel nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. I was a second lieutenant with that unit. Someone with call sign Reaper 1 directed that fire mission, saved 37 men that night. He turned toward the assembled Rangers, his voice carrying new authority. Staff Sergeant Webb front and center. Webb marched forward stiffly, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Sir. Martinez's gaze burned into him. Is it accurate that you and your personnel have been publicly humiliating this man, mocking his military courtesy? Webb's throat constricted. Sir, we didn't know. Know what, Sergeant? That respect is earned through service, not age. That some battles are fought in shadows you'll never see. Colonel Martinez's voice carried absolute authority as he addressed the stunned Rangers. Gentlemen, you stand before Sergeant First Class Samuel Hayes, call sign Reaper 1, MACVSOG. His classified operations across Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia saved over 200 American lives. His confirmed eliminations remain classified, but his legend is written in the blood of enemies who never saw him coming. The words hit the assembled soldiers like artillery rounds, each syllable reshaping their understanding of the humble man in the faded red work shirt. Sam stepped away from his maintenance cart, and something remarkable occurred. The slight stoop of age evaporated as decades of muscle memory took control. His shoulders squared with parade ground precision, the tremor in his weathered hands stilling completely. When he rendered his salute to Colonel Martinez, it was a masterpiece of military bearing, crisp, perfect. The salute of a warrior who had honored the flag under enemy fire and lived to tell about it. The colonel returned it with equal precision, holding the moment that spoke volumes about respect earned through sacrifice. Staff Sergeant Webb, Martinez continued, Mr. Hayes observed a tactical vulnerability during your building clearing exercise. Perhaps he could demonstrate proper threat assessment. Sam nodded once and walked toward the training village with purposeful steps. At the entrance where Private Chen had nearly made his fatal error, Sam pointed toward the second-story window with practiced authority. This position provides overlapping fields of fire into your entry point and first two rooms. Enemy could suppress your breach or drop ordnance into the stairwell. Standard procedure requires suppressing this angle or approaching from cover that denies its effectiveness. The tactical explanation was delivered with quiet authority that sent chills through every Ranger present. This wasn't theory from a manual, this was hard-won knowledge paid for in blood. Webb's face had gone ashen as the magnitude of his disrespect became clear. Mr. Hayes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I owe you an apology, sir, we all do. I was completely out of line. Sam studied the young sergeant with those steel-blue eyes, seeing not the arrogant ranger who had mocked him, but a soldier learning a crucial lesson about humility and respect. No apology needed, Sergeant, Sam replied, his weathered hand extending toward Webb. You're protecting this country now, that's what matters. Webb shook the offered hand with obvious reverence, understanding that he was touching history itself. Colonel Martinez stepped forward, addressing the assembled personnel. From this day forward, Mr. Hayes will be treated with the respect due his service and sacrifice. Any questions about that can be directed to me personally. As the formation dispersed, Sam returned to his maintenance cart with characteristic humility. The faded red work shirt still hung loose on his frame, the blue jeans still showed their frayed cuffs,